Hello, everybody. My name is Joris. the co-founder. I'm the co-founder of FoodWIN, and we help cities reduce food waste throughout Europe. And I'll be your host during this webinar. First of all, thank you for joining. A big welcome. I'd like to start this webinar by explaining a bit how we're going to spend our time together for the next hour and a half. So let me start by giving you the agenda. We'll start with an introduction where I'll share with you why cities should reduce food waste, why that is important, sharing with you the framework that we at FoodWIN have elaborated on reducing food waste. Then I'll also introduce myself in that part a bit more. Then we'll look at how to diagnose food waste, how to know where food waste occurs in your city, and in what sectors occurs most food waste. Then looking at how to co-create a strategy for your city, how to involve stakeholders in doing that. Then I will wrap up and we'll have a question and answer. And maybe just a few practicalities as well. At the end of the webinar, well, maybe first at the end of the webinar, we hope you'll walk away with concrete steps for the coming months in mind to become a catalyst in your city for food waste reduction. So then a few technicalities. As you maybe have noticed, except for the speakers, Anya, Andrea, Karine, and myself, you'll not be able to speak during the webinar. You can give comments through the chat, and that is to prevent background noise. So I'd like to try that out with a short question to you guys following at home or at your office. And the question is, where are you following from what city? And also, what type of organization are you from? Are you working at a city? Are you a food waste change maker? Are you a researcher? That would be really interesting to see. So let's have a look at what people say. Okay, we have somebody from the Netherlands, from Meijerijstad, from a city. Who else? Who else is joining here? Feel free to share it in the webinar. Oh, somebody from Brussels, Paula, Christina, researcher from Münster, Bratislava, from an NGO, Free Food. Great. That's a really nice group of people already. Then we have somebody from Devon, from the UK, from Macedonia, from Madrid. Wow, very, very international. That's super fun. Thank you all again for joining. That's really cool. So now I've really shortly got an idea of who you are, where are you from, and the big scope of people that are following. I'd like to introduce myself as well. And actually, my story starts 5 years ago when I went dumpster diving for the first time. Okay, probably you may not have heard of this term. It actually means going at the back of your supermarket, your local supermarket, and looking in the waste bins to recover food. And I still remember climbing over the fence of my local supermarket, and what I found was 2 big containers full of bread, dairy, fresh vegetables, and fruits. And this was all still perfectly edible. So I filled up my backpack and I went home, and I was happy, but at the same time, something was nagging. You know, this is just one small supermarket in one small village in Belgium, and there's so much food going to waste. So I asked myself the question, what can I do about this? And I started traveling for a year. And I discovered more about this topic of food waste, and I saw it's not only supermarkets who waste food, but it's also schools, it's also citizens, it's also food manufacturers, it's everybody basically throughout the food supply chain. And at the same time, I was also looking for solutions, and I found out that it's not only it's not only people are wasting food, but that there's also a lot of organizations that work on solutions of food waste. Food waste change makers, we call them. And those are restaurants using food surplus. Those are apps connecting people who have surplus food to people in need. And there's also entrepreneurs that help other organizations reduce food waste and save costs. And I noticed, well, you know, all these organizations together, they kind of have a puzzle that could help forming a zero food waste society, a society or a city where no food goes to waste. And there I really had a vision. What if all these food waste changemakers. They help organizations who waste food and to help them reduce food waste and to become, in all, to create zero food waste cities. And it so happened that one of the food waste changemakers I met in Brussels, Alice Kotsi, she was equally passionate about this idea of creating zero food waste cities. And we joined forces and we co-founded FoodWIN. And FoodWIN is, well, it's abbreviated for the Food Waste Innovation Network, and we help about 150 of these food waste changemakers across Europe. We support them and we connect them for exchange and collaboration. But at the same time, with that network, we also help cities and we also help food companies, hospitals, schools to reduce food waste. And as you see, our team has grown. We're a beautiful team now of 4 people passionate about realizing this dream of zero food waste cities. But why would a city want to reduce food waste? And also, why are cities well placed for that? And this is a question I would like to ask you again. Why are you here at this webinar? Why are you joining? Why are you motivated to reduce food waste? Feel free to share in the chat again. So feel free to share what's your motivation on reduction of food waste. Is it to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Is it because you think you need to? Is it because there's other reasons? Feel free to share in the chat. Okay, so I see your city doesn't collect food waste yet. You reduce environmental impact. Interesting. Reducing food waste is indeed one of the biggest ways of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and probably one of the most cost-effective as well. Then to combat hunger, indeed, there's so much surplus food available. So using this food to feed people in need is a really great way of feeding these people. Or starting an own business, indeed. And I've shortly listed the reasons here. There's, of course, many more, but there's lowering greenhouse gas emissions, feeding people, but also reducing costs. Schools, hospitals, they spend money on buying food, so reducing food waste also saves costs. And then why cities? Well, often cities are responsible for doing the waste management. So it's kind of their natural position to also want to reduce food waste. But in the same time, it's also cities are ideally placed to connect with other stakeholders, being close to citizens, NGOs, entrepreneurs, so they can take the role of being a catalyzer in the city and reducing food waste together with this field of stakeholders. So we've learned a little bit more about food waste. I got to know you a little bit, be it very briefly, or we got to know each other. So I'd like to introduce our partners in crime, the kind of team who organized this webinar. And first of all, there's Anja De Cunto of Eurocities. Anja is the person that is in charge of the working group on food at Eurocities. And she has a really great overview of what her cities, her member cities, are doing to reduce food waste throughout Europe. And then we have Andrea, or actually Dr. Andrea Magarini, because he used to be a researcher on food system. He's now coordinator of the Milan Urban Food Policy. And well, we met each other actually in the working group on the EU platform on food losses and waste, where we try to put cities on the agenda to as a vehicle, as a perfect organization to reduce food waste. So Anja, feel free, the floor is yours. I'm gonna give up control of my PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. And welcome everybody. I see we have 48, which is really great. So just briefly about myself and Eurocities. As mentioned, I work at Eurocities, which is the network of major European cities. We currently have more than 140 members. Big cities like Paris and London, but also smaller cities, for example, Ghent or Genova in Italy. A variety of cities that work on a variety of policy areas. We work on different policy areas, as mentioned, from mobility, culture, economic development, and commerce. One of the that we have among our 40 working group is food. Sorry, I just see that a lot of you say that they cannot hear me. Did you hear what I said mentioned until now? Sound here is good. Okay, so it's not just some people having some technical issue. Okay, so just to mention that Eurocities has 40 working group. Food is one of our work, but it's a very interesting one. And of course, the chair of our working group is currently the city of Milan and Andrea Magarini, that you're gonna hear shortly. Andrea?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Andrea Magarini, the food policy coordinator of the city of Milan, and at the same time Milan has this role of chair of Eurocities working group food. And we think that it's interesting to gather the interest of European cities to work in the field of food policy. And we use we act inside this network as inspirator of some activities and some connection with the European Commission and inside the other cities that participate in the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. One of the most interesting legacy of Expo 2015 about the topic of food. And globally, we have 167 cities that sing in the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. And one of the most interesting process inside this pact, this global action, is the regionalization in different part of the world. And in Europe, the Eurocities Working Group is the most interesting and advanced network that collect practices, knowledge, advocacy to European Commission, and design common European projects. So, thank you. Anya?
You're coming back.
Yes. Hello. Okay, here we go. Thanks a lot, Anya and Andrea, for your introduction. And thanks again for organizing this webinar with us. It's been great working together. I have a third and final question, or maybe first I'd like to say that the webinar will be recorded. So for people who haven't got access to the presentation, normally you'll be able to see a video with that in your mailbox in a few days. And for the people who can't hear me, well, maybe it's good if somebody writes in the chat that it will be recorded and we will be communicating this to them. So I'd like to ask a question. Where does food waste occur most in cities? In what sector does it occur most? Is it mostly A, in food manufacturers, B, in wholesale and retail, C, in hotels, restaurants and catering, or D, at households level? So again, feel free to write your answers in the chat. I see a lot of D's, people saying at household level. Are there people who say other things? See people say D. Well, and actually, there's a person who says B, wholesale and retail. Yes. All right. Actually, D is the right answer. Most food goes to waste at household level, followed by restaurants, caterers, hotels, followed by food wholesalers and distributors, and then followed by food manufacturers. And this is according to a recent study of cities in the US, but this also holds true for cities in Europe. And well, to me, I thought that was quite interesting, nevertheless, to see that it's food waste mostly occurs at households. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have definitely said that it probably would be at wholesale and retail. But maybe I should have dumpster dived my own dustbins or the ones of my neighbors. But I think it is a good example that shows that it's important to measure or to estimate where food waste occurs, to diagnose. And this is also something we included in the process we developed at FoodWIN to help cities reducing food waste. And we call this process the food waste journey. It helps you to go from just a city towards becoming a zero food waste city. So I'll go a bit into this process, and maybe good to mention that this process is also accessible in a manual that will be downloadable in a few days on our website that is called Food Waste Cities to the Rescue, the manual. So first of all, diagnosis. That's the first step of our food waste process, where we're gonna have a look at where food waste occurs in our city, how much in total, and what sectors are wasting the most of them. Secondly, we'll look at building a strategy. On the basis of that diagnosis, once we know the reasons, once we know where food waste occurs, it's possible to co-create a strategy with local stakeholders and also enable them to take action themselves and take the role of being a catalyst in your city. And then finally, taking action. I could spend talking another whole webinar about this. Maybe that will happen one day. But here in this webinar, we'll really focus on diagnosis and strategy. And I'll shortly touch upon how to take action in your city, or what are possible actions in your city when I'm talking about strategy. Great. All right, so let's have a look at the first part of our food waste journey, the food waste process, the diagnosis. And I'll use the why, how, what framework to explain a bit more about diagnosing food waste. First of all, why diagnosing food waste? Well, as mentioned, it's really a starting point for your strategy. If you know where food waste occurs and why that is, it's already, you have a number of measures that you know you can take to start reducing food waste. So it informs your strategy. Secondly is the scale of the problem. Many cities, once they start measuring or estimating how much food goes to waste, they really see, wow, this is an enormous amount of food, and they really want to start taking action. Karin, one of our guest speakers, will explain a bit more about that in a bit. Also, knowing the scale of this problem is a really good way to convince politicians to make it a priority and to start taking action. And then thirdly, impact measurement. Once you've taken action on food waste in your city, it's important to evaluate those actions and to measure the impact. All right, so that was the why. How to diagnose food waste then? Well, basically, there's three major ways of food waste diagnosis. And of course, there's many more ways to diagnose food waste, but at FoodWIN, we've selected these three ways to share with you. It's also what we've already been doing, but also these three ways are different in when you can use them in your food waste journey, in your food waste process, and also how much time and money they cost. So let's go to the first one, which is the food waste estimation tool. And this is a tool we developed at FoodWIN on the basis of existing research that can give you, as a city, an idea of how much food goes to waste, how much CO2 is linked to that, and so on. And first of all, how does it work? Well, we'll ask you to give a number of parameters about your city. How many citizens do you have? How many retailers? How many hospitals, schools do you have? How many restaurants? And on the basis of that, we'll do a calculation. And we'll get to know how much food waste in total is estimated in your city, how that food waste is divided over your several sectors in your city, and also how much CO2 and how much financial costs are linked to that food waste. And on the basis of that, we will also suggest some actions that you can take in your city to reduce food waste. When to use this tool? Well, this is really ideal if you're starting your food waste journey, if you haven't taken any concrete actions yet or not any coordinated action. It will, for you as a city, it probably takes a few hours to just gather those parameters that we will need to make the calculation. And then it takes about 1 to 2 weeks to have the report with suggested actions and the numbers. All right, so first one, food waste estimation tool. Second one is a second way to do a food waste diagnosis is doing interviews of key stakeholders and doing a SWOT analysis on those interviews. It kind of explains itself. Who are we going to do interviews with? Well, we're going to talk on the one hand to people in the field, people who have supermarkets or restaurants or schools, hospitals, or sector associations of that who are in touch with many members. And we're going to ask them basically three main things. Where do they think food goes to waste? Why is that so? And how could we solve those issues of food waste? And here it's really interesting if we can already give them an idea of how much food goes to waste. For instance, on the basis of the food waste calculator tool, on the food waste estimation tool, if you can give those figures, it gives an objective basis of knowing how much food waste there is and giving them inspiration to give concrete answers. Once we have those answers, we're going to analyze them in a SWOT analysis. That's a strength, weakness, opportunities, threats analysis. For instance, we'll hear a bit more about from Karine about the city of Bruges. But for instance, in Bruges, there's a lot of restaurants and hotels that don't really know where food waste occurs, how much it costs them. So this is something where we need to take action. An opportunity, for instance, could be, okay, there's a lot of young households moving to Bruges. They are environmentally aware. They want to do something about it. And so we could raise awareness about food waste and about possible solutions to them. Okay, so when do we want to use this tool? It can be used in different ways. It could be used at the very start of your food waste journey, possibly in combination with the food waste estimation tool, or it could also be used when you already have taken action during your food waste journey and you want to see how stakeholders found those actions, what they think should happen next. We're probably going to spend 1 to 2 months on doing these interviews, planning them, doing them, analyzing them. And if you work with an external organization, you'll have to foresee a budget being a city. All right, the third measure then we can take to do a food waste diagnosis are food waste measurements. And it says it in itself. We're going to go really deep into the figures. We're going to do real research of food waste in your city. Does it mean if we want to target a citizen sector that we're going to analyze the dustbin of every single citizen? No, that would be a bit impossible. We'll probably take a sample of 50, 100 households. We're going to try to get information from them either by doing a survey or by measuring their waste and the food waste in their waste. And then once we have an average per household, per citizen, we're going to extrapolate that to the whole population. When do you want to use this food waste measurement? It really depends on what you're doing. If you've taken action in one sector so far, let's say the retail sector, then what you want to do is focus on this retail sector and just do it on there. And that's to evaluate past actions. If you're focusing on rebuilding your whole strategy or analyzing the impact of your strategy so far, you'll want to focus on the whole food system. And there, this will take more time, obviously. Usually, such a measurement will take about 2 to 6 months. It may also take longer on the basis of how much you want to analyze, how much you want to measure. And of course, if you work with an external organization, you'll have to foresee a budget. So very shortly again, there's 3 ways of doing a food waste diagnosis. Firstly, there's a food waste estimation tool, ideal for the start of your food waste journey. It takes about 1 to 2 weeks. Secondly, there's interviews and SWOT analysis. This is for the start or the evaluation of actions, and it will take about 1 to 2 months. And then there's the food waste measurements, the most in-depth one, and this could be used for evaluation and of your food waste journey or of past actions and of continuation or revisiting the strategy. And it will take about 2 to 6 months. All right. So that was a lot of theory. It was a lot of talking. Now we have the luck that Karine Batseleer will share a bit about how Bruges used food waste diagnosis to inform their food waste strategy. And Bruges really has been one of the first cities taking action on food waste. We've been working with them for the past 3 years to do so. So I'm really happy that Karine can share how Bruges diagnosed food waste and how that informed their strategy. Karine, the floor is yours. I will stop my presentation so you can start yours.
Okay, thank you, Joris. Thank you for the introduction. I'll try to start my presentation. But our computer is slow today. Otherwise, we work really hard here, but I don't know if you can see it yet.
No, not yet, Karin.
Not yet. No, but maybe I can say something already. It's recording, so maybe you can see it afterwards. Yes, there's been a fault in presenting. I'll try again one time. No, he's just refusing.
Try with share your desktop.
Yeah, well, I click on it, but nothing happens. That's the problem. He's really in strike. No, I'll try again during the time that I speak, but I will start saying that we started indeed in 2015 with our sustainable food strategy. And we had the luck that we can get FoodWIN for our support and guidance in all of that. And it's actually been since a talk with Tristan Stewart that we really wanted to focus on food waste. And we, seen the fact that in Brugge we really didn't have any idea how bad it was about food waste in our city. We are the third largest city in Flanders region in Belgium. And there we have an idea that for households, we have 18 to 26 kilograms per year of food waste, but we didn't have any idea of target groups, how much is the problem there. So we had an opportunity that one of the students of social work came to us and she wanted to do her thesis for food waste in the retail sector. Which we gladly accepted because we really wanted to know how big the problem was in the supermarkets in Brugge. We also had a food waste project in the healthcare sector, but I'm not going to elaborate on that in this webinar, but you can find the information later on. And we also had the honor to have the food waste estimation tool from FoodWIN last week, and we had the results and we were really shocked about the effect about it. Now the food waste measurements in the retail sector, we had a problem that we have a small number of volunteers who was going to collect food waste, but again, no idea how much that was. So we really wanted to measure everything, and the students spent about one semester or 360 hours of gathering all the information from the local supermarkets, from the volunteers, and we really got a lot of information from it, but it was hard work and it took a long time. But with that number, we could see that we had about 750,000 kilograms a year from the most of the supermarkets in Brugge. Butchers and bakeries are not included in that study. And from that amount, we have about 70 tons collected a year. But we only want to do something more in the diagnosis. And we also calculated that if we could double that amount that is collected, we have as much as a CO2 reduction that we could have with installing one windmill. So we had a lot of information to go to the city council and say, hey, this has a lot of potential. We have to put money on this and really start a project. And really now looking for funding for really starting up a distribution platform of food waste in the supermarkets. So that was a real big help for us to convince the city council to do something about it. Now, with the food waste estimation tool that we got last week, the results, I was really shocked that the amounts we found in the supermarkets and in the retail sector were just little amounts. Indeed, households and even more restaurants have a big importance on the food waste in Brugge. And now we can see that we really have to change our target groups more to restaurants and to households to tackle on the problem there even more. The food waste estimation tool really helped us in get that info. It was really quick. From the info from the food waste in retail sector, it went about one semester, and on 2 weeks now we could have an idea of how big the problem was. So that is really something useful that we can use to provide another information to the city council and make other changes in our food waste strategy. In the healthcare sector, I'm not going to elaborate on that, but I still wanted to say that even here we found 30 to 45% of food waste in our healthcare sector. And we're going to have a manual on that, also with the help of FoodWIN. And we're going to present this in September, October of this year, and I hope we can distribute it to everyone. So maybe you can help in your city to help tackle on that problem. So sorry that my presentation didn't work. I hope we can send it afterwards, but that is everything I wanted to say. So back to you, Anja of Joris.
Thanks a lot, Karin.
Yeah.
Very inspiring what you've been doing so far, and a real example, I think, in Belgium and internationally as well.
Oh wow, thank you.
So I'm putting on my PowerPoint presentation again. Yes, I think it's appearing. So we've been talking about diagnosing food waste. We've also had a really interesting example of the city of Bruges. Let's now go into how to co-create a food waste strategy. And again, I'll use the why, how, what framework to do so. First of all, why should we want to co-create a food waste strategy? Well, I've mentioned it a few times already. It's a really great way to involve local stakeholders and taking the role of catalyzer in your city. At FoodWIN, we really believe in this aspect of co-creation and getting as many people as possible on board to reduce food waste. Secondly, well, why would we want to make a strategy? Because we want to do the right things. Informed by a good diagnosis, you can see what are the sectors that make most sense to start reducing food waste on and implementing that. Also focusing on the low-hanging fruit helps to create goodwill, create a new dynamic in your city, and start involving and motivating other organizations as well to reduce food waste. And thirdly, creating the strategy is a good way to also align the strategy with a larger an urban food strategy, or even the strategy of your city. How to do it then? This is the process. I'm going to explain a bit the process of that we developed at FoodWIN for the past 3 years when we were helping cities throughout Europe to reduce food waste. And it takes 5 steps. The first one is establishing a food waste task force, getting stakeholders on board with you to start reducing food waste. Who should you involve there? It's organizations who work in the food sector, who either are motivated to take action themselves or who have a good network in that sector, for instance, sector associations. The other ones could be supermarkets, restaurants, and so on, who are willing to do something. Then secondly, food waste changemakers, or organizations who work on reducing food waste, or at least who work on sustainable food. And then thirdly, a third group are civil servants working in the city in various departments. This could be sustainability department, the waste management department, economics department, and so on. Second step is that we want to start from the diagnosis. Together with that task force, we want to involve them in doing the diagnosis, but also in sharing the results, obviously, so that they see these are the main sectors where food waste occurs in our city, and these are the reasons why that is. Secondly, or thirdly, better, is to get inspiration. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's already quite a good number of cities throughout Europe that are taking action on reducing food waste. And learning from their examples of their best practices, knowing what worked for them, can really help us in our city to do the right things and to implement the actions in the right way as well. And then fourthly, probably the most important part to involve your stakeholders is the ideation part. Here we ask we ask stakeholders of your food waste task force, hey, on the basis of the diagnosis and on the basis of those examples that we've seen of the inspiration, what do you think we should do in our city to start reducing food waste? What do you think you want to do in our city to reduce food waste? And here we can really allow them to go wild, to be ambitious, to go a bit crazy, to then in a second phase choose together with them, these are the actions that are feasible, realistic, and that we can do together. So then you'll draft a food waste strategy, draw that up, and make an action plan for the coming year or few years. But then how to go from strategy to action. Oh yeah, and I forgot to share actually, oh, sorry, I didn't. How to go from strategy to action. Here, it's important to let your stakeholders, those members of your food waste task force, communicate about what they're going to do, communicate about that food waste strategy. Once they've communicated, they're probably more likely to really start doing it and be more motivated. And on the other hand, doing this by doing an event, for instance, in Bruges, we did a Feeding the 5,000. That is an event where we cooked with food surplus for 5,000 people, is a really great way to make them collaborate for a first time and to create connections between those stakeholders of your food waste task force. Because I can tell you, cooking 5,000 meals from food surplus, it's not easy. So it really needs collaboration. So that was the how. We've talked about the why, what, and the why, how. Let's now talk about the what. What makes up a food waste strategy, a good food waste strategy? First of all, having a concrete target is a really good way to create a sense of mission, a feeling of togetherness among the stakeholders of your food waste task force. So this could be in 10 years, we want to reduce food waste by 80%, in 5 years by 50%, in 2 years by 25%. And creating this really gives a concrete goal to work towards. Secondly, it's important to have focus. In 1 or 2 years, you cannot reduce food waste in the whole of your city. It's better to focus on 1 or 2 sectors that you want to reduce food waste in, for instance, restaurants and citizens. And thirdly, what are then the concrete measures you can involve in or you can use in your food waste strategy? Well, basically, there's 4 major fields. First one is raising awareness, for instance, to citizens about why is it important to reduce food waste and what are possible actions to do so. Secondly is preventing food waste. For instance, reducing food waste in hospitals by improving the processes of cooking food, of communicating between the wards, helps also to reduce costs. Thirdly, using food surplus. This could be by redistributing food to people in need. This could be by making new products. This could be by cooking meals for people. And so, as mentioned, that's a great way to help people in need or products for any kind of people. And fourthly, as mentioned, as a city, you're very close to stakeholders, to entrepreneurs, to students, to local businesses. So stimulating innovation and entrepreneurship towards them about food waste can be a good way to get more action going and again, to reinforce that position of being a catalyzer in your city. And then finally, what's important is also that you set evaluation procedures. How are you going to measure impact? In how many time? In what time are you going to do a diagnosis again? Will that be in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, every 3 years? By knowing that, you know you can work towards that, and you know when will be the next diagnosis. Practically speaking, to go from a food waste analysis, a food waste diagnosis, until having a concrete food waste strategy will take about 3 to 6 months for an average city. And what really works well is to have a spider in the web. Somebody like Karine in Bruges, who knows all the stakeholders, who knows the city well, and who is the single point of contact on food waste in your city. And thirdly, working with an external expert can also help you to gain credibility towards your stakeholders. It can be a neutral person who facilitates this co-creation process and motivates stakeholders to take action themselves. All right, again, that was quite some theory. So we have the luck that Andrea of Milan is here. Not only he's the coordinator of the Milan Urban, or he's working at the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, but he's also working in Milan on the ground to reduce food waste and to create more sustainable food systems. So Andrea, floor is yours. I'm going to again stop presenting so you can share your presentation.
Presentation. You can hear me?
Yes, Andrea.
Okay. And you can see also the presentation?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for this opportunity to present the action in Milan about the definition of our food strategy, that is a food policy of Milan, and that we start in 2014, beginning to study our food system, and we start to define and we start to define our food policy as a common action of several actors inside the cities, that we engage in different ways of a consultation. And inside our food policy, we have 5 priorities. And one of the most important is the fighting against food waste. For each priority, we have a set of guidelines, and then each guidelines a set of action. And one of the most important in which we are working now is an action for recovering and redistribution of food losses, and promote action and initiative and about information and education that can address the citizen. And we create this policy through a big task force, really a common action of 3 main bodies: the municipality, that can guarantee the public sector engagement, so the institutional engagement in this kind of policy, that provides several departments, municipal departments, several municipal agencies, and so on. That is one of the big pillars of the food policy task force. The second one is the Curriculum Foundation, one of the most important Italian grant maker that act as relation making, like things similar, and that engage all the actors that they have funded in the years before. And the technical support was guaranteed by an independent research center that is called ESTA, Economia e Sostenibilità, that promote as an umbrella organization of several researchers that were already active in Milan. And in these 3 main bodies actions, we create really a triple helix of innovation, and that are fundamental for working together and defining the priority. And we start inside this task force to define figures, a representation of our food system. So each element of the food system, like production, transformation, logistics, distribution, consumption, and waste, were studied and see several interconnection among these elements. And for each interconnection, we start to see the different input and output of energy and matter. And for sure, food losses and food waste was one of the most important that we see. And here you can see a selection of big data that we have collected and see together, and also foresee the intertwining among the different silos that we involve in a unique systemic vision. Just to see the fragmentation of all the data that we have, in which we work. But as Joris asked me, one of the most interesting elements of our approach is the definition of the public consultation, because all of the knowledge that we have shared in the previous slide were collected inside a preliminary document that we define, entitled as the 10 main issues of Milan food policy, that collect all of this knowledge and work as a policy brief, a big policy brief, and was designed by a research team created by a core group, and then a consultation of 50 Milan's researchers, and designing by 10 young researchers. This document was put in the base of a public consultation, firstly from stakeholder and really also shareholder, online and offline, that work in a sectorial way. So we start with a consultation of the Deputy Mayor's Cabinet, with a consultation of the neighborhoods, of the cities, of the startups, of the public and private operators, and association NGOs, and so on. And after this preliminary part of consultation, we gather together these actors in a unique town meeting. So a public assembly in which each expert can interact with other, bringing down the silos. And at the end, all of this knowledge was at the base of a public deliberation, a public vote of our city council that defined this food strategy. And now we are in the implementation phases, and one of the most interesting actions that we want to share with you is a tax reduction on food losses and food waste that we delivered in last February, and consists in a reduction of 20% of the waste tax for the food businesses, but also for the public actors that work in the food system, like supermarkets, restaurants, school canteens, company canteens, producers, and so on. So all the actors that can act inside the food system can participate in this kind of reduction. Was created with a multi-department task force that engaged the fiscal department, the environmental department, our office of the food policy, and the environmental municipal agencies. And we start with a public consultation with the several charities and also private sector organizations that define a previous proposal. Then we start a dialogue inside the City Council, and at the end, in February, the City Council vote. And for the first pilot year, the reduction is about 20%. But when we can measure the effect and the input of and the outcome of this pilot year, we can increase from a maximum of 50% of reduction. And now we have a previous overview of the participation of the actors of the cities, and we have more or less 700 of tons that are provided from several supermarkets. And inside the cities, the three majors, the three main supermarket holding are inside this kind of tax reduction. But we want to work also with the small actors. And for moving from a big institutional tools to local organization, so the grassroots movement. We create a lot of workshop with the neighborhood association, and we gather together 35 local organizations active in the field of food waste, food losses and waste. We create several tables, one for really discover the geography of these actors, the second one about the impacts of the initiative, the third about the scale up, the action for the scale up, and the last one about a SWOT analysis. And we gather these actors also because we are trying to create a lot of funding opportunities for very scale up. We collect opportunities from municipalities, from regional authority, and from Calipro Foundation another time. And we work together for create common initiatives. And here you can see a map of these initiatives, and also the list of the several actors involved and in which we are working together. So thank you for your attention, and the slide is available for sharing.
Super interesting, Andrea. Thanks a lot for sharing how you are taking action on food waste in your city. I'm again gonna try to turn on my PowerPoint presentation. Yes. All right. Cool. What I found particularly interesting, Andrea, in your city is that you're taking action in ways that no other cities have done that. For instance, through the tax reduction. I haven't seen that in other cities, so kudos for that. All right. Actually, Andrea, you also gave the last part of content of this webinar. We started with a crash course on dumpster diving, maybe you still remember, but there also was a lot of content. So I'm going to try to help you get started by summarizing that very shortly. First point is cities make the difference. Cities not only are responsible, but also are in the ideal position to reduce food waste. Secondly, diagnosing food waste is key to inform your strategy. Once you know where, how much, and why food waste occurs, in what sectors, it already gives ideas to start acting upon that. And thirdly, co-creating a food waste strategy as a catalyst with local stakeholders is an ideal way to get a whole dynamic going in your city, and not only just do it yourself as a city, but involve as many stakeholders as possible. Well, and finally, also just have fun. 5 years ago, when I started my food waste journey, let's say, I couldn't know how much fun I would have. I just had really a lot of fun. I met so many interesting people. You'll see that food waste brings people together, connects people. You'll be able to get your hands dirty, and you'll be able to get to take concrete actions and see results in a immediately short term. And together with the organizing parties of this webinar, that is Eurocities, Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, and FoodWIN, we've made a few tools that you can use for each stage of your food waste journey. And the first one is a manual that we created at FoodWIN, Food Waste Cities to the Rescue, that describes this whole process of diagnosing, strategy, and action with concrete examples for each stage. Secondly, when you're in your diagnosis phase, you can use our food waste estimation tool. We developed this at FoodWIN. You've heard Karine talking about it. We are able to help a few cities with a free basic trial version that will give you an idea of how much where food goes to waste, and also that gives you a few ideas for potential actions to take. If you're interested, feel free to reach out by mail. I will also include a bit of information about that in the follow-up email. And then thirdly, there's an excellent document that Andrea and Anya have created, Food Losses and Waste in European Cities. And this gives an overview of cities in Europe, how they are taking action on food waste, what are different ways of taking action, quite in detail, very inspiring. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And then secondly as well, if you are a city and you want to take action right away, but you don't really know how to start, you can always use an external expert. And at FoodWIN, we're always happy to help. Helping cities to reduce food waste is really at the core of what we do. We've been doing this for the past few years. And we can help you make a diagnosis. We can help you go through the process of facilitating to co-create a food waste strategy. And we can also implement concrete actions. And for this, we have a network of 150 food waste changemakers across Europe. Probably there's also a few in your city that can help reducing food waste. Well, and before we finish, I'd like to thank our wonderful team of this webinar, Karine, Anya, and Andrea. It was wonderful to work with you, to get so many people on board to listen to our webinar. I hope we inspired you guys at the audience to take action on food waste and to start going towards this goal of becoming a zero food waste city. We're now going to go into question and answer. Anya will facilitate that, but if we have to select questions and we cannot answer all your interesting questions, feel free to write us an email. Here are the email addresses. Anya, over to you.
Thank you very much, Joris, and thank you very much also to Karine and Andrea for their presentation. So we have currently collected 5 questions that I'm trying to bring together so that they make we can have a fil rouge that connects all of them. I think I'll start with Joris, a little bit about the underlying algorithm. The question is related to food waste estimation tool. You should enter the number of restaurants, for example, the quantity of food waste. How does it work in particular?
Well, so from our side, we've gathered information from research that is available throughout Europe, of studies that estimate food waste at restaurants, for instance, at hospitals, at citizens, and so on. So we have an average of how much food waste occurs in cities, at citizen level, or we have an estimate of how much food waste occurs per hospital bed. Of course, then these are estimations and they are averages. So it's important to know that the outcomes of this food waste estimation tool is really just an estimate of size orders rather than concrete figures of your city. But then what do? We ask cities indeed, how many restaurants, how many hospital beds, how many citizens do you have? And then we use these numbers to extrapolate with the parameters that we've gathered from research to get an idea per sector how much food waste occurs and get an idea in total of how much food waste occurs in a city. I hope this answered the question.
Yes, we have Vicky asking something very similar, but I hope that the answers was enough. And then let's go to another question, which is about cost savings. Do you have data maybe about, or can you elaborate a bit more about a number of cost savings that food waste prevention provided to cities and restaurant and hotel?
Yeah, definitely. This is something really interesting and often overlooked, actually, that reducing food waste can reduce an incredible amount of costs. As Karine already mentioned, we've been working in the city of Bruges on reducing food waste at hospitals, and there we know from previous research that an average hospital can reduce costs by 200,000 euros per year by reducing food waste by half. So that's really a big chunk of money. For restaurants, for instance, it's similarly, not as much, of course, but an average restaurant from a project in London could reduce costs by £10,000 per year by reducing food waste, again, I believe, by half. So really a lot of cost-saving potentials for citizens, for every kind of organizations, for hospitals, for restaurants, to reduce food waste and to reduce costs.
Thank you very much, Joris. It was very interesting and definitely a huge incentive for retailers to collaborate on the topic of food waste. Now I would like to pose a question to Karine. Can you please specify some examples on how you have prevent or reduce food waste at the level of retailers and household? And if you can please expand a bit about your main challenge or barriers about preventing you from engaging with food businesses.
Yes, of course. Well, specific examples on how to prevent in retail, we still have to do a lot of work on that, on the prevention part, but we are waiting for the approval of the funding. Maybe we get the approval this summer and then we can go ahead with that. As regarding to reducing food waste to the retail sector, that's mostly done by social organizations and volunteers like soup cafes here in Bruges, who also are in our local platform of sustainable food policy, and they are trying to work together to take that amount to a higher level. And even when we get the funding, we can do more. And to the household level, we work with, they used to call it the compost masters. They work around sensibilization about composting, but now their job is more expanded, and it's also around food waste, and they give information to households and explain about the dates on the products. That's with rice and sugar and stuff like that. It can be used after to use that date, and that will have also an impact on the food waste on that sector. But I still believe we can do more, and we have to do more on that. But I hope in the coming year we can give some more practical examples on that part. And then about the question about the barriers. With supermarkets, they were really reluctant sometimes to give their actual numbers on how many food waste they have. It's sometimes difficult to get the right numbers from or the right persons to talk to. But otherwise, all the organizations here in Bruges that we work with who are working around food waste are really enthusiastic and ready to work together to tackle on the problem. I hope that's enough for an answer.
If you want, I can add something to that for retail and households. For retail, what we've seen that worked really well is using apps like Too Good To Go to help people buy this food that would have gone to waste. So usually these apps provide discounts of 50% or more, and like that people come to a shop they otherwise wouldn't have come and buy food that otherwise would have gone to waste is just one day before use by date, for instance. For households, there's an interesting project both here in Brussels and Belgium. There's actually two. One is the maîtres de frigo, or the fridge masters, that are citizens that are really engaged on reducing food waste. They get an education of how to reduce food waste, and they get to sensitize other citizens to reduce food waste. It's a really great way, and one of the listeners of the webinar has pioneered that. And secondly, in a few months, in October, there will be in Belgium for the first time the Just Keep It challenge. And this is a kind of an online platform where people can sign up and take the challenge for 3 weeks to reduce food waste and reduce costs. And they get all kinds of tips and tricks on how to do that. And this will also be, I think, a really interesting way to reduce food waste.
Thank you very much, Joris. A connected question that we just received is about how can you convince supermarkets to provide their data?
I can only say here in Brugge, we started with a questionnaire to everyone. That didn't work that well, so the personal approach is mostly the best, and we got the best results from that. And also from the volunteers who already work with the supermarkets, now we went to ask them, can you go to the supermarket and say that we don't have any. Sometimes they really hold back from what is the city going to do with all this data. But once they were reassured that we just want to see how big the problem is and that we can do something about it together, then they were more open to give the data.
Thank you very much, Karin. Joris, again, just one question that just arrived. If you can share a bit more about the organization that have prototyped this fridge, Maître de Fridge, that we have in Brussels. Because I've heard a lot also from the city of Berlin that initially started with initiative, but then actually got rid of it due to health and safety reason.
Well, really interesting because I love this project. She's called Marceline Bonneau, who designed the program and who taught also the citizens to become experts actually in food waste. And I'm sure she will be willing to share a bit more information about her work. I'm also maybe able to share it in the email that we're going to send in a few days to the participants.
Okay, then we go to another question that we receive, and this one is for Andrea. It's about a bit of the details of your food policy and how much of it is dedicated to food waste as compared to the rest of the policy or strategy that you have developed in the city of Milan. And also if you have different priorities related to food waste according to different target groups, for example, the retailers, the households, and if maybe you can also expand a bit about the challenges of the barriers that you had in engaging with food businesses.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That is really articulated, and I present only two actions that we are now implementing, so the tax reduction and the neighborhood grassroots organization engagement. But we have a list set of different targets for the food policy, and the holistic objective, the main goal is cutting the half of food waste in 2030, so act as the SDGs target. And for gather this goal, we have 2 years for starting a lot of actions. We are working with open street market, and now we are gather 11 pilot street market on a total of 86. We are working with school canteens. We are lucky because we have the ownership and we manage all the school canteen thanks to municipal agencies that have 400 of canteens, and 100 of these, so the 25%, is linked with charities. And we collect 1.5 tons per year of bread and fruits. Another target is related with the general market of Milan, that intercept more or less the 30% of all the fruits that are managed in the north of Italy, so a big hub of food, and for sure a big hub of food waste. And we are working with a big association, with a big food banks active in Milan for creating specific agreement inside this open market. But as method, we are trying to select for these 2 years of piloting a lot of action to monitor the results of this action, and to see the most efficient for reinforce these initiatives and gather the main goals. And we are not alone in this work, because cities act as facilitator of actors, and we have these 3 main bodies, so the municipality, the private foundation, and an independent research center, but also we are working with a lot of other actors. And the action in the grassroots organization is similar, in which we are working in other kind of actors. And there is a question also about the cost of a food policy. No, I don't remember, Anya.
About the challenges and barriers preventing engagement with food businesses, or
Okay.
if you have different target compared to different target group, different priorities compared to different target group.
Okay, the engagement of food businesses is more related with the tax reduction, because it's a tool for food businesses, and when the food businesses participate in this. When food businesses participate in this reduction, they need to send us some knowledge of their activities. So the data, for example, are one of the first information that they need to send us. And the tax reduction permit is really an umbrella initiatives in which we can start some advanced speaking with other actors of private sector. And yeah, this is more or less. We are in the 2nd year of implementation of our food policy. We have a specific office inside the mayor office, and about the food policy, and we want to create a big assessment of these 2 years for designing the future of implementation of the food policy. And so this is more or less one of the most barriers is the capability of local organization to be ready to find a lot of flux of food losses. Because inside the city we have mainly 3 food banks, 2 really big and 1 that are working for become important, and a lot with these 35 local organizations. The local organizations are totally different among this list, and one of the action that we want to create is know how we can support the reinforcing and how we can support the creation of local network in all the departments of the cities. And yeah, this is the answer.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I give the possibility to Marceline Bonneau also to speak with us and tell us a bit more about this master fridge. But in the meantime, we received a very interesting questions related to how many cities currently have a urban food policy. And I guess here we mean not only something related to food waste strategy, but something that is comprehensive. Would you like to, Andrea, would you like to answer, or would you like me to give an answer?
Yeah,
So I can start by saying that last year, Eurocities with the City of Milan and the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, we did a small research about the topic of urban food policy. So where food waste is one of the aspects of food policy. I mean, around 50 cities between Europe and around the world answered to this small research. And if I remember correctly, only less than 20% mentioned that they already have a comprehensive food policy strategy. As mentioned, London has one, the city of Ghent has one. I don't remember whether Bruges already has one. I know some French cities like Grenoble, Bordeaux. Bordeaux is currently working on one. And in Italy, for sure, Milan already has one. Does this answer your question? Oh, great. Bruges has also already one since 2015. Okay. While we wait for more questions that might come, I give the word now to Marceline, that it's able to give us a little bit of an overview about the Fridge Master initiative.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am not sure you can see me or you can hear me well.
We can do both.
Great. So thanks, Joris, and thanks, Anya, and everybody for giving me the opportunity to present to you briefly the Metro Frigo project. So that's a project which was initiated by the region of Brussels, the Ministry of the Environment, a few years ago already. And the idea is that I work on it together with a local NGO called Refresh, in order to create a third wave of masters. So in Brussels, you already had the composting masters. I think it's pretty similar as to what there is in Bruges, and also the gardening masters, maître composteur and maître maraîcher. So the idea was to design a whole training scheme and to train citizens in order to share tips and tricks about food waste. But the way we did it is that we actually co-created the training content and the format with the citizens who were engaged in this process. We also changed the approach in a nutshell in order to move further away from a, I would say, traditional psychological linear approach of saying, guys, you should stop wasting food because it's bad, and we know that doesn't work. We went via a practice approach, which was more oriented towards how do you live on a daily basis? What can we all together think in a way that you can change your individual practices and get some tips and tools that would enable you to make things differently. The way we approached it as well was really to start from what people come with. So we had a nice, first it was a contest at the first event where the Fridge Masters were, where they asked visitors to just hold a board while saying, my tip against wasting food is, and you had people saying, okay, I cook all the leftovers in a soup, or I make a pie, but you also had those saying, I have a husband, I have a dog, or I never have anything in my fridge, I always eat at friends' place, etc. So going back to what Joris was saying before, we're talking about food here, so it's really basic, it can be fun. And in the way we approach it, we were saying, guys, you all do something that is related to food waste. And in any case, everybody is wasting food. Even us, highly engaged, we do waste food once in a while. Okay, we don't necessarily waste a huge amount of food, but it's pretty impossible never to waste anything. So just let's be honest with ourselves and let's take a positive approach to it, and constructive one, and you have everything in hand to do that. So the project was a huge success. We trained some citizens. We had a huge success with the ministry was very happy. We had some visibility in the media. The Facebook page, I sent the link of it on the chat. The Facebook page has gained a lot of followers. Everybody was really happy about it. Unfortunately, due to some HR and budget priorities, the ministries did not follow it up. So there is still a high demand of citizens to join the training, to become fridge masters, and also just to share the experiences of the certified and trained fridge masters. we were a bit, well, everybody was really sad about it. I mean, not only myself as I coordinated it, but all the participants. We were really a good team. I'm saying that for two reasons. The first one is that if you want to launch anything similar in your city, do it. People are really eager to be trained and to learn, but also to realize that they have not only the skills, but just the knowledge and the creativity. I mean, food waste, you know, is really about being creative. If you have too much food, how do you cook it? But also, what do you do with it if you don't want to cook it? Who can you give it to? With charity, with friends, and all the available possibilities. And the second thing I wanted to mention is also that, well, thanks also to a public funding, now we're going to take advantage of all the data we've collected throughout the training to create a tailored program, which we've called Food Waste Watchers. So the idea is that everybody who wants to start reducing food waste can make his or her own program tailored. And there will be also a tool, we're going to design a qualitative tool in order to evaluate the amount of food waste at the beginning of the program and at the end. That can be also used with the challenge, the Just Keep It challenge that Joris mentioned before. This will be publicly available in French, unfortunately, but in a year. But it's also to say we have a lot of info that was collected during all these projects. I'm fighting hard with the regions so that they diffuse it widely because we developed many tools. So you can put pressure on them as well. It's all in French, unfortunately, but there is a lot of things that have been done on that. Once again, just to conclude on this, I'm happy to also, if I have a minute or two, to answer any questions. But for us, a few important things that we co-created everything together with the citizens, also with the Ministry of the Environment, with Bruxelles Environnement, and we took an extremely positive and constructive approach to food waste. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marceli. And meanwhile came a question whether the material will be available, and you answered that you're fighting very hard for this to happen. It's going to be in French, but if you get the green light to do so, we as organizations, FoodWIN, Eurocities, and the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, we will of course be very happy to share all the tools that you have created.
And just to mention, I sent us the link to the Facebook page, to the website we've developed as well. Even though maybe we can't just, we created some methods and tools. We have some videos that are available already, and you find them easily on all the links I sent. But I'm also happy to be sharing on the content, if not on the document, with everybody who wants.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, we got 4 more additional questions. So I'll try to bundle them together because we only have a few minutes left. We'll start with something that was concretely asked to Joris. If you have more information on how to measure and reduce food waste, in particular in hospitals. Mm-hmm. And if maybe you can also expand a bit, whether, since we are talking about hospitals, maybe talking also a bit about schools, on educational program, directly schools.
Okay, excellent. Yes, for sure. Basically, at FoodWIN, we're working both at schools and hospitals at the moment, and the approach of measuring food waste and improving the processes is quite similar. Usually, we measure together, or actually we leave the measurement as much as possible to the people working in the kitchens, working at the services of the hospital and of the school. Because like that, by seeing how much food has to be thrown away, again, they really see how much it is and they want to take action. So usually after a week of measuring, this also already goes down automatically. But then we also do something more. We take a step more and we do an innovation workshop together with these stakeholders of the school or of the hospitals. And we try to get an as mixed group as possible. So people working in the kitchen, but also people taking the orders, people, students maybe, or parents or teachers at the school, so that all these stakeholders are there and can think about, okay, these are the numbers of the diagnosis. These are the problems, and this is what we can do to reduce food waste. So again, there's this part of co-creation that is really important. And then there's a third phase, obviously, of implementation, of action. Usually we do this on a small scale to do a trial in one ward or one week or whatever of serving food. And then we see the impact and we evaluate and we try to scale it up then. So this is a bit the process both in schools and in hospitals. In schools, then, of course, there's a whole area of introducing food waste also towards the pupils. There is material available of various organizations that help teachers have programs on reducing food waste, classes on that topic, but also involving them in the whole thing in the canteen is really important. So maybe helping, asking them to help measuring how much food goes to waste or analyzing what is in the waste bins is a really effective way of involving them and to make them think as well about, hey, am I also reducing food waste? What could I do? And then finally giving them rewards if they eat their plate or if they really are aware about reducing food waste can also be a good approach.
And thank you very much, Joris. I think I'm going to ask the last two questions because then we are really going to run out of time. But you all have my email, and now you also have the email of everybody else that participated to the webinar. So you're welcome to contact us also later with your additional questions. Unfortunately, I cannot share the list of attendees like some of you have asked. But if you want to share your details like Marceline just did, you're very welcome to do so. Otherwise, for privacy reason, I cannot share the details. So maybe if Joris or Karine or Andrea also you have some thoughts about a pay-as-you-throw schemes or volume-based fees. So in particular for organic waste, in order to make people more aware about the amount of food waste and a bit more conscious about.
Well, maybe to head off, I think basically wasting food is too cheap. So schemes like this can really help businesses and citizens to be more aware about wasting food and also to help them with a concrete incentive to reduce food waste at home. And especially, I think, for businesses like restaurants, retailers, and so on, this can be quite an important incentive.
Andrea or Karine, would you like also to share some thoughts?
I don't know if it fits in the question, but when we have a reception, that's for free. And we ask people, hey, if you don't come and you don't notice us, then we can give you a fee of 15 or 20 euros. And that helps mostly to reduce our amount of food waste on events.
Well, that's a great initiative. I think we should also start to do it, especially in Brussels with all the commission events. We have a huge amount of less food waste.
Yeah.
Andrea would also like to mention something about the pay-as-you-throw schemes.
We have inside the policy also a direction about organic waste, and one of these is I don't know the English name, but the punctual taxation of the actors of the city. So really is a pay locally in the different houses that have a big rate of waste, but is not really my task, so I'm not really able to answer correctly.
No problem. But thank you very much for giving also your thoughts about this. And then I'll go to our last question. Again, Marceline already provided some answer in the chat, but maybe Joris or again Karine and Andrea, if you want to also provide your thoughts on whether you're familiar with any ethnographic research that was conducted in households anywhere in Europe and would analyze the actual food management habits as opposed to what people report they do with their food habits. And from this, we will then be able to extrapolate what is the real behavior that leads to food waste.
Mhm. Well, personally, I don't have any knowledge about ethnographic research, but I could do some research myself and try to send it to you if you drop me a line to the person who asked the question.
Okay, thank you very much. I see some of you are sharing their details. As mentioned, you're more than welcome to do so. What I can instead offer to you that if you want to share something, in a couple of days, I will send to all the registered participants the presentation and also a link to a YouTube video where you will be able to re-see this webinar. So that also those that had some technical issue or received some email and people that missed the webinar due to time differences, everybody will be able to relook at this. So if you want, you're also welcome to share with me some initiative or some toolkit that you have developed. I will be more than happy to share them with all the participants. And for example, Regina just asked me if we can share a Google Doc so that everybody could autonomously put their interesting link or research. It's something that we can look into. It's not something that is actually not a bad idea. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Great.
Okay.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna do
Sounds
so. So we are now in our last minute. I'm gonna be the one saying once again to all the participants and to the speakers a very thank you very much for your participation and your time, particularly to Joris, Karin, and Andrea for all the time we put in the organizations, and all of you participants for being with us for the last an hour and a half.
Start your food waste journey now.